much do I need to level up now? 50,000. I feel like it's been a while. When did I last play this? I played it on Wednesday, didn't I? Oh yeah, the boss, and then I came here. God damn. Alright. Wasn't that long ago. This guy's hard to get to. Hey, Hilda. So, this guy... No, this is different to the other guy. No, it is the same guy. So these ones respawn. Yeah, the beauties thing. They're a bit quicker than I am. Alright. You're new here? Oh yeah. Interesting, I thought I've seen you before. So I'm gonna explore this area a bit. This zone. I didn't realize all these people would be aggressive. What does this say? Ah, bridge. There is stuff down there. Kind of. How's it going, Batman? What are the chances something shows up on the bridge? Seems high, right? An arena? Well, I'm sure you're winning all of them. God damn. Is this where we started? Yeah. Yeah. Somehow come around in a circle. How dumb. Okay. I think I'm just gonna have to cross the bridge. I want us to level up before I do anything major. Damn it. Yeah, on a win streak? I'm not surprised. They have hanging pots as well. I gotta start wearing my headsets properly. I don't fall off my head. I think we can try out coming down here and see what happens. What did you do? You didn't do anything. Did it sound like I said your name? Oh, that spawn's bigger. Fruit Loop is back. Yeah, of course. Where have you been? You finally settled in. Thank goodness. Do you have a... Does that mean you have a computer? Yeah. I came here at the end of the last stream. No! What would the fight be about? Surely you didn't find this on your own. No, not really. I can't remember how I got here though. How are we feeling after 525 deaths? We're doing okay actually. I am ready for more. The thing is, I keep being a pansy and using the ashes, so it makes things easier. Yeah, I don't know if it was Aris that told me to jump down a hole. Yeah, exactly. I would always pull out the cheat code. That's what I mean. Oh, wait, I have been on this side. Okay. Man, this really is all just repeat. Nothing new here. I can't remember what I did on Wednesday. Well, I think you sent me to that bonfire before for a different reason. That bonfire. You get what I mean? And you didn't mention anything about a hole. Oh my god, that's something that my mum used to tell me, Bloop. Like, if your friends were jumping down a hole, would you jump with them? Because I think it's like, if I would be like, oh, but so-and-so did it, she'd be like, yeah, well, if they jumped down a hole, would you jump down with them? And I'm like, oh my god. It was like their favorite phrase. Yep. I guess the answer is no. Yeah. I think I went to the tree, like there was an item. Can you just say what was there? Because I can't remember. There was something... I went to get an item somewhere. An emote. Yeah, I got it. I got it. Hello. Have I fought Bale? I have, yeah. I did. I did end up doing that. But you don't really want to jump down a hole. Exactly. I wasn't trying to jump down the hole. I don't remember what I was trying to convince him about. It was probably a sleepover. I used to always want to go to sleepovers, but I was never allowed. Alright, what am I wanting to level up now, dude? Vigor. You just got the game. Elden Ring. Ooh, good luck. And you're in for a treat. Why is it yellow? Is there a reason why everything is yellow? You weren't even allowed to sleep over with your cousin next door. Yeah, I relate to that feeling. The only time, like, my first sleepover was with a girl's, it was at a girl's house that my parents knew since I was 4. Which I thought was just interesting. Like, they're like, oh, we known the parent since it was 4, so since she was 4, so it's fine. I don't think I need it. I don't think that's... And it was interesting that that was their bar to let me have a sleepover. Oh no, my parents knew about the sleepover. It wasn't a secret sleepover. I feel like after I was 18, they weren't... Oh, what's happening? They weren't telling me what to do. They would try. Yeah. No, my parents kind of stopped caring too much after I was 18. If I was staying at a boy's house or something. But I think the first one, they kind of went nuts over it. And then after that, they moved on. Oh. They still tell you what to do. But you moved out! No, you can't jump over those. Yep. Wasn't there like another cage or something that looked like that? And I was like, no, I ain't going in there. I'll get trapped. Maybe it's time to get trapped. Now. Yeah, my parents went from being worried. It's another... It's a Bonnie Joe. Okay. Don't worry, we're exploring. I always say it as goal, not in jail. Sometimes those families we knew longest were okay with being around. A couple, the most troubling making friends were the ones we knew the families the longest. Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I mean. And to be fair, she wasn't that much of a troublemaker anyways, but she wasn't like the good girl. Her parents were like strict, probably had similar values to my parents, but like she wasn't like the good girl that they would have like thought that she was, which I thought was funny. Am I messing up bosses? Well, I'm not up to a boss at the moment, actually. I still need to find my next one. Oh, Portugal lost? What does that mean? Is it over? I spoke to my mom. She didn't say anything. Hey, Radon. The dream is over. No. Maybe that's why she was sounding a bit sad. Thanks, Read message. River south. Oh, there is an item down there. These little candles look like items and it's really annoying. Ooh! The quality of matches in this Euro has been atrocious. What do you mean? Have they been? I don't know. Most teams played like dog water. Okay. Well, just to keep you on your toes. Maybe everyone who's in soccer at the moment plays like Dark Order. You know, it's just, oh, hello, right. I was gonna drink with some water. It's Ronaldo's last Euro. Oh no. He's been getting old! I was wondering when it was gonna be his last whatever. Okay, these rats won't stop getting away from me. Oh, dang it. No. Oh, there's a hole there. I feel like I'm gonna get lost. Okay, that doesn't continue anywhere else, so that's fine. This does have a ladder. Be wary of ill-omened creature. Okay, I didn't need that. Ill-omened creature, that's a lot of things. Whoop! Oh! No. Cool. Is that what they mean by ill-omened? It's been playing for Portugal since 2003. That's like over 20 years. Kinda crazy. Okay, this is openable. Let's use my big brain. What are you trying to say, huh? I feel like I went in a loop, which means I've missed something. Okay, back down I go. I didn't go down this way. I went this way. Right? Let's use your big brain. Makes it sound like you're making fun of me. Like you think I don't have a big brain. Maybe that does just lead back. Okay. Ronaldo was one of my first celebrity crushes. Oh, cool. A bunch of those. Use my teeny brain. Wow, thanks. Oh, I am out of thingo. Yeah, I didn't even think it was attractive. So I just find that interesting. Oh, what am I meant to do with this? No, that doesn't hit. This is a pain in the butt. Am I in my second playthrough? No! This is still the first of the DLC. Okay. just gotta grab most of the stuff here. I'll stop saying I have a minuscule brain. About. Alright. What a pain in the butt. There's still another one. I genuinely don't believe I have a big brain. There's several of these. Ah, why? This goes to another thing. Jackie's brain has no wrinkles. Okay, I have a small brain, but it's wrinkly. Ah, there's a bunch more. Alright, well, I can walk around. Now we'll go back down. I feel like people are already expecting me to be on my second playthrough of this. That's just insane. Alright, have fun. This all looks like doo-doo. I have one of these left. I was wondering if that guy would be alive. Ow. Alexander's friend. There's so many of them. Ow. Oh my god, you know what I had a dream about? I had a dream about Elden Ring. And I had a dream that there was an enemy that was just a giant boulder. Like this really big round ball. Yeah, it was just, and it was really hard to kill. I don't know, that was... I guess that was my dream. Part of it, anyway. Ow! Oh, I didn't see that guy behind the ghosty thing. Hey, Patrick! How you going? Oh, that was weird. The way that it flipped around. Yeah. How dare you? Oh, cool. I think. I thought we came back around, but we didn't. No, we didn't. We haven't been in this room before. Bleed required. Oh, can't wait. Yeah. I'm just getting my bearings. I saw the pod. Oh my gosh. This is me investigating. Making sure I didn't miss things. Hmm. Oh, you get me. No! Okay. I was hoping for a shortcut. Someone told you about the supermarket sim game is real. Wait, what? Is there really durian soap? Is there really durian soap? That's weird. Why would it smell like... Why would you have a soap that smells like durian? We have a boss here. Ah! Hello, Red? Alright, I guess I'm just gonna run in here. Cursed by Labyrinth. What the hell is this? Oh, I hate boss fights like this. Oh no! Not one of these! Like my least favorite! And you can't see him. You don't need to tell me that. I could just use my cheat code. Oh, never mind. We got him. Is that it? I did do a lot of damage to that guy. The way that I struggle with those everywhere else, but not here. Oh, you found your favorite K-drama? My Mister? Is it called My Mister? Okay. Interesting. Durian soap would be stinky smelling, yes. You are correct. Okay, should I do more caves? Watch Demon Slayer as an anime? Yeah, you should. I still have this one. I've never eaten durian. I watched I'm Not a Robot. I thought it was okay. Check out that church. Wait, which church? I was just gonna go do that big church that's on the map. You don't see it. Is it a place I haven't been to yet? This thing? Oh, I don't think I've been to this. Okay, I haven't been to that actually, you're right. Is this down or up? Do I go... do wonder how I get there. Because I can go from here. Do you like the happier K-dramas or the more serious? The happier for sure. It's raining. Well, yeah, I figured I'm done with the Shadow Keep. Why is it raining? Yeah, have me keep checking my map. Alright, so we can't go... go down. Have you finished season 1 of the Alchemy of Souls yet, Patrick? I just remembered I have a horse. I'm not even joking. I actually forgot that he existed. Yeah, I watch some K-dramas. Your place is in the jar. Oh. Nice, sainthood itself awaits you within. For shamans like yourself, this is your lot. Life you were recorded for this alone. I like to watch Tooth Whip. Ew. I like to watch K-dramas with my fiance. So I might not meet your qualifications anymore. Qualifications? Oh my god. Read the description of it. Oh, I don't want to. I can only imagine what it says. Oh, this is item crafting. Be strewn with rotting, misshapen teeth. Filthy and seething with disease. The teeth are embedded in the whip and dose the victim with deadly poison upon each strike. Yes, lovely. The wounds will ripen as they grow inflamed and ooze pus. I'm Oz? Shocking. I don't know if Pookill is a Harry Potter fan. You finished it all? Oh, okay. I haven't finished season 2 yet. Okay. We just finished watching season 1. And we were just like, huh. Not quite the turn we were expecting. Like, we already like gave our predictions for how they were gonna end the season, and then it was just like, oh, okay, not that. A bunch of wolves. But yeah, I'm a little worried with how it's gonna go. Oh, I missed it. Wait, did it teleport? Maybe it teleported. Oh well, I can't be bothered. Oh my god, what if it's like a big wolf boss? Yeah. Sometimes we've already been feeling it with the potholes. God damn it. Like, it really does just feel like certain characters forget certain events that happened. Is this area just a bunch of wolves? Yeah. I only really watch K-dramas, like, with Yada. I don't watch them on my own much. I do sometimes, but I haven't recently. Oh, it's another one of these. Oh boy. What happens when I come up here? Oh. Don't attack me. There's gotta be a thing nearby. Oh, it's funny, yeah, like, watching a K-drama with someone is pretty fun. Because sometimes they will be dead serious. Like, it'll be really serious, really dark, and then it will just be insanely funny. Staring your heart apart. Oh. Okay. Is there not a frickin'... There has to be a thing nearby. What if they koala dramas? What do you mean? Oh, I hit the wrong one. Shrimp on the stick, hey over there. I was looking for a grace. But all I'm getting is bloody wolves. I was like, surely there's a grace nearby. Well, you're out of luck. Well, apparently, yeah. I know, Punisher, I'm sorry. I've been feeling it too. I've just been trying to get through Elden Ring. 889, not you two. With a Hawktoir. Surely we've moved on. Oh, here we are. We've got one. You got a grace, guys. We're gonna share the community? I will play again, don't worry. Maybe next week. I feel like everyone took a... like, wait. Everyone's like, wait, you gotta play Elden Ring first. We'll get to this other stuff later. I won't deal with that now. Oh, I can't look at my map. Okay. Okay, we'll keep on going. Yeah, I played it the other day, like a couple of games, and I felt so rusty. So I'm not looking forward to getting back. That whole Hawktoir thing is so wild. Yeah, I don't really know, like, I don't understand it. I get it, but I don't understand it. I don't know how else to explain it. I don't know why. I'm like, yeah, but why? Why did it... I think it's like, why did it become a theme? Yeah, like, that person got famous for no reason. I find it funny, I don't get it! Ooh, is this the church? No, what if there's something in the church? Oh, really? I've been in Tenryu, because I dropped out of, whatever the first thing of purple was. I'll get back to it at some point. Yeah, Mighty Ruler. It's just so hard to keep up, because I feel like what happens is, and this happens with, kind of most multiplayer games, is that when you start playing a new game release, there's a lot of, you're going to be versing against a lot of new people. So things will be easier, like you'll feel like people are on your level, and then once all that player base kind of fizzles out to just the hardcore players, or the people who only really play Tekken and fighting games, then I feel like I'm just in trouble. It's like, oh, I don't play as much as these people. The funniest part is a girl is counting on that being her boost to fame, so she's moving to LA to start the show or something. Is she actually? Examine remains. Do I have to go down? Oh. Oh, it's one of those! Yeah! Oh, interesting. Okay. She's moving to LA because of the Aqua? Huh? Does she have anything else that she's skilled at? These people in LA, man. She just signed with one of the biggest agency firms. Are you guys serious? Well, yeah, it's kind of scary for someone to change their life for something like that in general. I don't know. I'm like, why would I lie to you? I think this is crazy. No, I already work in an agency. I don't need to find anyone. She also quits her job. Yeah, no, I would never do anything like that. I would not change my life. If I somehow randomly became a meme, right? That is not cause for me to drop everything. Ooh, okay. A thing. Starlight shards. Yeah, right. That's why you're not famous. Well, yeah. Don't want it. I don't want it enough. I know, like, there's a lot of seemingly level-headed YouTubers that I come across that are like, they know that what they have is temporary. And that they're like, okay, riding the YouTube wave out, and then once it's gone, you move on. But I just can't see myself, like, suddenly doing, I don't know, going to LA. Going to LA doing what? That's what I don't get. What are they, a model? Are they on an app? Are they an influencer? Yeah, all the influencers here are in Melbourne. In my head. At least all the gaming ones. It's kind of annoying. She can do whatever she wants. I think it's just like, I just want to know what. Yeah, I guess we're going in a thing. The Gold Coast Byron Bay. Are they? There's gotta be something in there. Yeah, the rare Adelaide influencer. That's what I was saying, yeah, all the gaming influencers went to Melbourne. And they're still going to Melbourne. The amount of people that I knew that initially lived in Sydney, I just upped and left. I don't know. Sorry, but from Adelaide. No one's in Adelaide, it's just me. What's in here? Nothing good comes out of a church. Yeah, it's a person.
Well, we don't often receive visitors. I am Emir. Welcome to Manus Meta. It is
Ymir, hold on. I remember someone saying Ymir.
lands so forsaken as these, chance encounters are precious indeed. Seeing that we have convened here on this day, allow me to mark the occasion with a modest offering.
A holy necklace and a ruins map. How are you meant to look? Okay, whatever.
The map I gave you charts the site of a hallowed ruin. It is said that after sounding the hanging bell there, one's fate will be guided by the stars.
Guided by the stars,
I only
okay.
wish to be of service, to help those who fight for their purpose.
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, am I? I can see it in your eyes. You are a fighter, are you not?
No.
Is something the matter? I've given you a map. Oh, I suppose you expected. I know the feeling. Those with purpose are nothing if not ravenous. For power. For truth.
Oh, I can study sorcery. Okay.
Oh, yes. Do mind your feet. You wouldn't want to hurt the little boy.
The little boy. What are these people fighting? Ask about the glintstone? Was that not just a...
Is something here to squeeze another? I am a glintstone.
But I'm not a
sorcerer.
glintstone
We
sorcerer.
study the stars and examine. Are you familiar with our findings? Long ago, we began as stardust, born of a great rupture far across the skies. We too are children of the greater.
Ah, yes, yes.
Is that not divine? Is that not sublime? And yet, none can fathom its implications. Its utter brilliance.
Back in the Dark Ages, some of the only library archives of any kind of documents were in churches. Yeah, like, churches did hold a lot of control and significance before. I understand that. What's that? What is this stick? Offer rump. Oh. Okay. I don't know. I thought it was going to be a bit more important. Look around the church more. Have I not? I have to look for this boy, don't I? Do you not see anything? Perhaps another NPC? Did I walk up past another NPC? Is it this kid? Is this a person? No. Well, maybe it was someone hiding under a thing. Alright. I being blind again? She's hard to see. It's a she. Oh. Here they are.
I've no interest in small talk. My only concerns are the concerns of Count Emir, and you are not among them.
And they were hard to see.
Only, there is one thing I will say.
If you look at the wrong angle, they're almost invisible.
Should you cross him, you will sorely regret it.
Okay.
Be gone. There is nothing more to say.
Oh, okay. Is that it? That was interesting. So, they gave me a map. Now, you mean to tell me that these maps... Like, that's not helping me. I did take a gander at my map. I just don't understand them. They're so hard to see. What am I looking at? How do I not look at it better? I haven't been here yet. But it's going the other way. Oh, is it this thing? It's this thing. And then those squares are these. I guess. But still, I don't understand what these maps are of a hollowed ruin. Like, there's no X-Master spot. I just hate these maps that they give you. They're not helpful to me. They're this big, and they're like this. And then you can't look at it bigger. You can't look at it next to your map. You can't do any of that. You have to memorize it. Ridiculous. Brilliant sounds gross, but that's certainly south. That's gross. South gross. Oh, it's this one? Okay. Go east. Which way is east? This way. I'm going back to that beach again. Remember how I did that? And then you were like, why are you at the beach? And I'm like, I don't know. I was told to go to beach. Getting some beaches. Damn it. There's an item down there. I still haven't gone yet. Oh, shh. No. Not like this. Why did I jump out? Alright, back to going east. We're going east. Not really going east right now. This game's a challenge. Do these have anything to do with it? I'm getting magicked. Perhaps there's a reason why there's fingers there. But there's hands everywhere. Am I meant to go this way? Oh, there's a thing here. A finger runes over here. That is why there are fingers there. I see. And this is just the area with fingers. The area with fingers. And whatever that is. You know what's worse than the fingers? These giant things. Yeah. Blowhorn. Don't get wormed on the way, thank you. I'm ready for my deworming. Did I miss the horn? I can't look at the map. Did you hear someone scream? Are these like finger eggs? This looks kind of weird. Yeah. Gracefully boosts HP restoration from Flask of Crimson Tears. Yeah, that's useful. Wait, was that all just for that? Is there really nothing else here? They just want us to give you a creepy, muddy place with giant fingers and hands and worms. They were like, I bet you were wondering how the hands were born. It's here, by the way. Oh, something's chasing me. Bruh. Oh, it's a leech, it's not a worm. I didn't listen. I'm just gonna rant and rant.
Poor thing. Another bad dream, Yuri. Put that rotten thing out of your mind.
Who's
That
Yuri?
tangled mess can't hurt you.
Oh, the hand.
Oh, there you are.
He's got a hand as a
The
pet.
exalted timbre of the bell
That's
has
weird.
reached these ears of mine. Gracious, the starry sky is wondrous tonight indeed. Only your fate shines brighter. Now, these are for you.
Oh, more. Okay.
Think nothing of it. I have made my decision to be of help. May the gleaming stars guide you evermore. Ah, you met Yulan.
Jolan,
I hope
huh?
that she behaved, at least. The poor girl has overcome grave misfortune. Her tongue can be sharp at the best of times, but don't think that makes her a bad person. It's no surprise her little sister, too, has a heart of gold. I fear that you have borne witness to the whole of it. The conceits, the hypocrisy of the world built upon the Erdtree. The follies of men. Their bitter suffering. Is there no hope for redemption? The answer, sadly, is clear. There never was any hope. They were each of them defective, unhinged from the start. Married herself, and the fingers that had her. And this is what troubles me. No matter our efforts, if the roots are rotten, then we have little recourse. Ever young Mikola saw things for what they were. He knew that his bloodline was tainted, his roots mired in madness. A tragedy if ever there was one. That he would feel compelled to renounce everything when the blame lay squarely with the mother. May the gleamings...
Check in inventory. So this one's now the thing at the top. Oh, it looks like the one at the top. But we haven't been up there yet. Yeah, I've just noticed, like, that area down there. Where was it? Down there, looks like this. I'm getting it, am I? Questionable. Oh, I wonder if that lady had, another more dialogue. What? All bosses. Hard to just list them all. The last one I did was, I can't remember what his name was. The madness guy.
How did Count Ymir reward you with that? Then I see you have gained his trust, and therefore mine.
Sorry, I'm
I
shaking
am
the
Yolan.
camera.
The night is yours now to wield. Don't get the wrong idea. We are neither friends. I am merely honoring.
Is she like an
Enough of
NPC
you.
you can spawn? I can't get to the top yet? Oh, okay. Understandable. Oh, you mean from there? Very vague in directions sometimes. No. I'm also very bad at understanding. I've been feeling like I've been very bad at communicating. You need to take an alternative path. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's what someone else has said, that there's more to it, but you gotta take a different path. Okay. I guess I go in there, huh? Let me explore a bit too, though. Like, have I fought the bears yet? I fought 2 so far. I don't know if there are more, but I fought 2. Ah! These things are a lot more brutal than I thought it would be. Okay, whatever, I'm leaving be. Oh, I didn't kill him. Oh, they got more of those annoying things here too. This is just blocks. Alright. We'll go back round. Wait, that thing is Moore's friend. What? Wait, how did I end up here? The centipede thing? The bug looking thing? How do you know it's Moore's friend? Is it an NPC? The thing that was on the ground. I was trying to avoid it. Do I have to go back? At least I can see better now. This thing. Brand ahead. Oh. Yeah. I would have just like rocked up and attacked it if I wasn't feeling lazy. I don't know where more was. But I thought we were doing these. Yeah. Just keep it in the back of our head. Go to more. But find out where more was and go to him. Why is there a blood thing here? I don't know. Sometimes I find blood spots in random places, and it's like that's what I think. I'm like, who are they fighting? Better do my best parkour skills. What, to jump down there? Contraption does not move. No! Contraption does not move! Alright, no, we've learned. I'm using two hands. I'm using, like, claw method to run and jump. A lot of crabs. Jump down there, you can jump down there. Oh no. Oh no. That's a sound I don't like, actually. I think I know what's down there. I think I know. Seems like a bit of a jump. Didn't even jump. Hello, Rusty. Oh my god, didn't even jump. Even with my new strat. Third time the charm? Some might say. Ah! Made it. Oh, what are these? These aren't crabs. They have succumbed to Mesmer's flame. I'm assuming. Oh, they explode too. Wait, are they the same ones that's in the base game? Oh. How was I to know there was a gap? Yeah, Rhoda. Oh, okay. Oh, this is ridiculous. Watch where you step, baby. I'll pay attention to that next time. I am streaming on 2 platforms at once. This. Ow. No, I use OBS. Alright, there we go. Oh. Oh, my favorite. I know I have to get to him. Dude. They're just so hard to get through. There we go. God, I hate those. Oh. Why are things vibrating? Yeah, it's one of those. That's what I thought it was. This is... You're meant to jump on that. I don't believe you. For real? There has to be an easier way. Okay, we made it. Never mind. I'm watching our steps. Oh, you're able to walk in there. See? Oh, I meant to jump on the cross thingy. There's nothing down here. Alright. This way. There we go. Stealing the crab's food. What do crabs eat? Yeah, one of these again. Damn it. Bye. There's an item here. Hello. Dung ahead. Ooh. Okay, that's why it's a dung ahead. They also love baby turtles, really? They're omnivores, I didn't know. Oh, not the baby turtles. Did I run around in a circle? No. Hello. Nah, this is the special attack. You can hold it for a bigger charge. Oh, that looks painful. How about we do that another time? Oh, that was hard to do. Let's see your parkour skills. No, is this just water? Okay. I have no idea how well it would do in a PvP. It's a slower weapon. Is it important, this item? Because why can't we swim? Okay, we can get it later. Good, good. Yeah, I don't know about this weapon in PvP. But I also don't know PvP. $20 kg of armor and 10 kg weapon is why you can't swim. Listen, don't come at me with reason. Hey Mario, I don't need all the spoilers. Oh hey, bat. Wow. You was afraid I wouldn't see that gap. I'm glad I saw it. After falling in that gap earlier. I'm looking at the gaps. Hmm. Ooh, hello. A theme. I have no idea what this does. Does this lower the water? This is just like that area in Wolong. that I haven't done yet. Wait, are we up there? They're draining all the water. Oh, okay. I see. Oh, that's interesting. New Londo water pump. Okay with the business. That's the slide. Excellent. Let me just jump straight down. Yeah, no, I guess we don't have to worry about the swimming bit. Now I can get that item. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't get it then. I was thinking, like, I didn't realize we are gonna drain the water. I was just hoping that I would get another bonfire and I would run back and try it. Oh wait, there was a thing here. Just want to see what it looks like. The gap. Because this was filled with water. Oh, okay. There's also item in there. Let me go get that other item. So guys, I had agreed to going out to breakfast with a friend at... Okay, this doesn't make it a lot better. Oh, okay, drop down. No, it didn't! It's still up there! To breakfast at 9 o'clock. Why did I do that? Where was the grace? I guess I'm just gonna have to run there. It is the perfect time for breakfast. Well, they said breakfast, and I'm like, okay, cool. And I was like, what time? You know? Yeah, but I normally, like, on the weekends, I get out of bed at, like, 10 or 11. So this means I have to get up at 8. It's like a whole 2 hours before. Ooh, okay, that's something you want. I haven't come across which boss. The boss from last stream? I did. I haven't come across a boss's stream yet. Ow. I got a Fire Knight seal, is that important? Where did that go? I don't know what to tell you about the fights, man. Oh shoot. Oh right, it's to cast spells. I thought maybe it was like a key item. Man, I tried for those. Oh no. Why is this guy so OP? Ugh! Damn straight. And we got a helmet. And the other one's where he summons. Well, I mean, unfortunately I did put out Tish. And then Tish made it easy. Mesmer? Are you talking about Mesmer? Mesmer's a while ago. Where was the, There's a grace somewhere. Which was easy to see from where the level was, but... I don't know where it is from here. Which, okay, this goes up. Go back out there? Oh. Oh. How fun. Take a step outside. Whoop, 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 whoop. The tree, the tree. Oh, it's this thing. Okay, can I do him later? I want to do him later. I want the grace. I guess I can walk past him. I don't have to do him to do the grace. Surely. I only have 2 health thing. Let me see if I can walk past him. I don't know why it looks familiar to you. Oh, son of a... Why'd I go this way? Was I not in here? Am I in the wrong direction? Where is the grace? I've lost my bearings, man. No! You turn right, not left. You would definitely get lost in a different country. Well, yeah, exactly. Like, I can never leave this country. There's two of them? Which way would be right? Right is like the wall. Yeah, there's a thing here. I still feel like there was another one down there. Oh, that's where I came from? Okay, that's fine. I can fight the stuff down here now. I can explore properly. Alright, lovely. That one, gone. I think there was another. No hit! Woohoo! Ah. But maybe I can bring out a horse. Ah, here's a grace. Lovely. No, I can take that elevator. The one that was inside? Ah, that item. Don't remember how to get up there. This area is so hard to get bearings on. I don't know. Wait, you fought the Mesmer guard? Yeah. Okay, I will try. I think the excessive smoke isn't helping either. No, not really. And I don't want to know either. I kind of want to be surprised by the following bosses, if that makes sense. I want to know, like, discover them as they come. Shady Sunflower. I know where this is. Did you hear about the DLC buff? What do you mean? DLC buff? The DLC is pretty good. Yeah, it's good. A bit tough, but good. Is there anything down here? Oh, yeah, I know those stats, yeah. Of course. Oh, there's another elevator. They buffed it? Yeah, oh yeah. So I heard that they did buff those, level ups. Why didn't I check upstairs first? I don't know, I also was not expecting this elevator to take this long. Maybe I thought this elevator went up. It did not. What's this one called? Tree Worship Passage. Okay, let's go back up. It is sometimes a bit too hard. I am glad that they added the buff in, but I wasn't, like, I didn't feel like it was necessary. This is a long elevator, but at least we know that's there. The tree cult path. Oh yeah, I'm doing better now than I was at the start. That's for sure. Another cookbook that I'll never use. Ah, there's a hole! Am I fighting a sunflower, am I? I know there's a flower involved. There's a flower involved. Do I go down now? I know there was that other elevator, but I don't know how to get there. This area is hard to walk around. I'm so lost. I will go back down. Tree Worship Passage. Yeah, by the way, I don't know what it looks like. I'm pretty sure... I don't know who was it that spoke about it. I don't know if it was Oris or someone else. In passing, it was mentioned. This rickety old bridge. Oh, another one of these statues. Okay. Undertale reference ahead. Like, actually? I've kind of forgotten about Undertale, I'm not gonna lie. I know that's why you asked. Germania. Yeah, Marika's room. Massive. Alright. I might have... I don't have a Shadow Realm Blessing. No! Yeah, runes. How good is it? 80,000. 80,000 runes. Not a lot of, dead flowers here, huh? Is that a lot? No, it's decent. They kind of made the... I don't know. A Sagittary avatar? Oh. 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 I'm never gonna look at flowers correctly again. Man, my cousin had me fighting, like... painting flowers this morning. Oh no. What else is happening? No, no, no. There's more happening. Oh no. It's back. Oh, and it's moving. Even more now. I haven't even been able to attack it. Ow! Ow! Okay. This thing has phases. Now I have a mist to run through. I wonder if one's gonna pop up at the same time as the other. I know that's why he asked, Germania. But I already heard about a nasty sunflower. And initially I thought it was those like sunflowers in like just out in the open. I didn't trust the look of those. Ow. Oh no. Oh. Oh. That's me under that? Okay. I wasn't able to move. I can't hit him. Not from here. I can't say I'm doing well. Oh, I'm stuck. Am I meant to hit its face? Oh shoot. Okay. Okay. I wonder if it's better to roll instead of run those. Yeah, I don't know if there's a reason it comes back in. Keep on trying. That was a second go. No, I reckon the first run is always the easiest. Or hit run, yeah. You could go for some sunflower seeds right now to eat. What are you, a hamster? This is my second go. Oh, sorry, this is my third go, actually. Yeah. I think hitting the face does do more. Now. So I have to target the face. Ah! I've ever had sunflower seeds as a snack. Okay. Here we go. The respawn. Oh, it does do damage in this. Okay, I see. Nah, this is my regular save. I've only ever played this game through once. I don't like that I move so much. Like, it's hard to get to. Uh-oh. There must be another one. There must be another one. Yep, here it is. You know what this reminds me of? Cuphead. Cuphead also had the sunflower fight. What the frick? Yeah. Oh, I'm out of health. Okay. We're learning. Today, I saw LeBron James' hairline eating a lunchbox sandwich. I do not know what any of that means. Yeah, it seems to get more aggressive each stage. Oh, frick. Well. I don't like that attack, so I always stuck it up. You're doing well. No. Oh. Oh, there's more. I'm sorry, I'm silly. I should be hitting its head. I cannot heal through that. No! God damn it. I promise I'm trying. I'm out. I'm out of health. That's not nice. Okay. A sunflower is beating up a girl. Okay. Help me. Spawns. Okay. Ah, weren't you really? I cannot see. No. Alright, now learn the stage. I haven't learned the stage well. I think it starts off with a big explosion. Yeah. Ow, that I shouldn't have gotten hit by. I swear that timing was different. There we go again. Oh, it hit me still? No. Oh, then. It's confusing for you? Okay. The hitbox is weird, especially like with these vines. Oh shoot. Oh. Ah! What is happening? Okay, we did it. Aha! Wait, that was a remembrance? Felt like a nice little bonus. Oh, yeah, when it respawns like 2 times. Yeah. Because it made you think like, what? I just beat it. Yeah, I know what you mean. I thought it was going to give me some Erdtree thingos. Oh well, I only need 3 more. That's funny. It was a fun fight. It wasn't too hard. Yeah. That took me, what, 6 goes? Kind of. Yeah, let's not spoil what I'm gonna verse, okay? No spoilers, please. I have no idea what's in front of me. Draw the sunflower. Excuse me, what? What do you mean? Alright. Well, I'm assuming there's nothing in this area. It really was just a sunflower fight. Yeah, it's even on the map. Interesting. guess we go back up. I still have to try and get towards the Shadow Keep, don't I? I want to see what's at the edge here. Yeah, just smoke. Yeah, maybe it's easier for me to just go here. Or the next one, actually. Yeah, I never used the Remembrance, actually. Where am I? Oh. I still have to get another one up. God damn it. There's so many to get down there. There's a lever there. There was, I know. But it was a long elevator. Alright, let's walk around. So, I think I'm meant to explore this bit. Oh, freak. These guys are back. Is it this way? Who is this way? Oh yes. If only I could run and jump. Alright, we're running and jumping again. You're not even gonna read it? Why do I have to read it? Okay, goodbye. Ooh, I don't think I've gone. Aren't you curious about the descriptions? Not really? The power of its namesake can be. Oh, whatever. Is it the part that said the Erdtree is a shadow of the Erdtree, born in dark notions that bear no sense of order, that twist and bend its stock, rendering it brittle? I don't know, I just never read things, I guess. How about being down here? Read that other item you got. Michaela's Great Rune? Probably not that. Is it that one that you're talking about? That took a while. Glad I had something to read while I was going up. Am I winning new area? I think so. It's not that one? Ah. Another grace. Could this be a grace? Unless it's a mimic grace. And here we are, in the Shadow Keep again. Can I read you bedtime stories? Sure, let me just, like, make a audiobook for you. Well, I knew I wasn't done with the Shadow Keep. I knew there were more levels. No worries. surprised this thing didn't attack me at all. $10 you can't find where their grace is. Which grace? I just found the grace. Oh, there's that item that I haven't got yet. On the map? Can I get to that item from here? No. I wonder how tedious it would be to make an audiobook. You know how much water I would probably have to drink? Audio. Yeah, exactly. All the takes. Surely the audio mixing, someone else does that for you. I don't think that's the hard bit. The audio mixing. Yeah, true. You have to rest your vocal cords. Oh, goodbye, I guess. So rude, it's what they deserved. Alright, I'm sure this one will get me. Never mind. I think upping my stamina was a good choice. Oh, you can go out here. Google says, And was Google the AI? A voice actor should expect to spend about 20 hours in the studio recording a typical 10-hour audiobook. So about double the time that an audiobook is. Yes, well, it looks like I have to go out there. A shadow sunflower. Interesting. A busted bone shard. No, you don't have to send it to me, it's okay. Oh, another grace. I've always been mildly interested in voice acting. Mildly interested. That's why I don't do it. It's just mild. What do you mean take a look at all the graces in Shadowkeep? How am I meant to take a look at them all? Oh, hello. Dude, these things are nuts. Look at the map, duh. Hang on. I will look in a second. What's attacking me? Why are we upside down? These statues are upside down, right? I can't look. Damn it. Oh, here it is. Look at them. Okay. They make an L. I don't know. I'm not seeing any kind of pattern. Hang on. There's probably something here. I do feel like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm missing in the other levels though, which is what I'm worried about, and I'm gonna have to go back. Oh, you're pointing out how many there are, okay. Well, yeah, it's a layered place. Very layered. Thanks, I know. I'm not looking forward to all the parkouring. And the running around. Do you not like these bats? It's like they're not hard to kill, but they tend to get you first. Do I get on this cogwheel? Let's jump on this cogwheel. Wrath from afar. How exciting. Alright, we made it. There's always just that little bit of you going, am I gonna do it? We're in a different place. I thought we were in the same. Great. What an exciting spot. I do prefer games to be linear sometimes. Wait, is that thing still alive? Oh, it freaking lived. Can you believe it? Yeah. What a joy. How do I get the item that was up there? Really, it was on top of this. Have I been down here? No, I haven't. No! Sorry. I really hate those. Oh, my voice gets so deep. No! That actually sucks so much. This place is a maze. I cannot deal with them. I didn't even get the item. I went onto that cogwheel to get there. I don't know if the bat somehow died. But that was something else. So I went this way. And then I went this way. And I'm sure there's an easier way to do all this, but I guess I'm just backtracking my steps. I hate that it's still alive. Like, why doesn't it just just disappear? Disappear from my life. Okay. This silly thing. The way that it's sitting on my runes. Can't believe I struggled the first time. Okay, it's kind of worth it. At least it wasn't for anything stupid. There was a platform here. Oh wait, it's this thing. Okay, maybe nothing important here. Keep looking. You know, there's nothing important there. But we'll go back up. Okay. Deal with this guy. Are you not meant to be able to jump over? Go down. You finish that enemy off, that's important. True. There's an item here. Oh. I don't know if the other spot was important, was it? But there's a bunch of stuff down here. Why didn't you jump across? Because this looks more important. Doesn't it? Doesn't this look more important? Alright. I'll come back. What am I going to jump over for? I was lucky. I felt like I would just jump on top of that thing. Oh, I could use a knife. I have a knife. We'll throw a knife. Just get it to me. I have forgotten I have those. I get very weak. I just don't know if it will make me fall off if I jump on it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the physics of the game is. Can I move? Why is it stuck there? Okay, lovely. I don't want to do the jump. I don't know where the stake takes me. I'm gonna find out. Oh, it's all the way down here. It's not, no. I don't even know where this is. Do I? When did I come here? Yeah, I can't remember what the thing was called. Was it the 7th floor? No. Nope. Loft. Okay, let's try loft. Alright, the loft is the one with the climbing stuff. I'm on jumping. I think there's a point. Where was it? Was it? Yeah, I've forgotten where I was. Oh wait, it was here. Okay, okay. Son of a fucking bitch. Ugh! I hate her. Oh! It's not fun. I'm going the other way. I'm done with all these things. This parkour rubbish. I'm just running the stone. Okay, just climb. Oh my god. god, I really can't climb down, huh? Alright, moving on. Oh, we can't open it, can we? Okay. Moving on again. Ooh. Everything turned blue. Why does this look like the starting area? Stand in front of the Marika statue? This thing? Well, I would have come here anyway. Have mercy for the spirited away shamans. Huh? Yeah, don't remember what it was called, but oh, wrong one. Was it Oh Mother? Yeah. Oh. She would never figure it out. No, like the gesture I remembered getting. I remember getting the gesture. I probably would have gotten halfway there. Statue view. Like, I probably would have just walked past it and be like, yeah, whatever. How would you know to use it in front of the statue? Because you guys said it was important. Like the room. If you listen to the ghosts in the village, they would have been talking about shamans. Oh, I see. Oh, it's got one of those thingos. I can explore this later. Oh, I'm not allowed to explore it now, huh? I'm gonna forget about it. Alright. What's this place called? Statue something? Hinterland. Oh, okay. That's why I don't remember the names of anything. They're not the same as the Grace names. Hinterland. Ah, hi Skylar. Oh. Oh no. Commander Gauss. On a horse. Okay, we ain't fighting on a horse. Nothing. This is a bit aggressive, isn't it? You know, I normally say the first one's usually the best one. Well, I hope that's not the fact for this one. That was a terrible start! Oh. Good evening, Skylar. I'm probably gonna need a bathroom soon. Ah, god damn it. Are these, like, you can't go through these swords. So let's get out of the starting area. Oh, right, we're throwing some purple rocks at me. Is he riding a pig? Is this the bacon part? Is this Tusky? Okay, well I did damage. Ow. No time for healing. Best attempt so far. I hit him once! That was my second attempt! I thought maybe. Roll too early. That's not the time. Ow! I hit so much. This is the boss to try out the deflecting too. You reckon I can deflect? Like, I mean, we could try it out. I don't think I'd be good at it. Oh shoot, I shouldn't have gone for a second one. Yeah, of course. He's flying. Why is the pig flying? Oh, that's a gravitational pull. Oh, I'm out of health. That would explain why that wasn't working. Yeah, alright, continue at it, I guess. His hitbox is crazy. You think someone determined it was the entire length of the ball. When you mean hitbox, is it like him hitting you? Or like the guy on the horse? I rolled, but it just didn't roll. I see. Do I remember the Radahn festival fight? I do, yeah. I remember the festival fight. But I summoned all the NPCs to do that. I can't remember if I did it on a horse too. Every time I try to roll through it, but then I don't. And then I try to do that and you can't do it there. I rolled too early. Okay. There's like a double up. Like when he attacks and the other thing attacks. Did my camera freeze? Oh. Well, I had a good run. My audio's wonky. Damn it. Okay. I tried updating OBS to see if it would fix the audio, but apparently it didn't. I'm gonna go bathroom. That's just BRB. Yeah, thanks. I fixed it, don't worry. I need to put the ad controllers back here. That doesn't matter. BRB, I'm gonna go bathroom. Welcome back! We got a new boss! Okay, I'm back. I have to get comfortable. Why do I feel like it's gonna be the rest of the stream? Just this guy. Oh. Unless I can't see my whole... There we go. Back in we go. Okay, so the start bit, I keep stuffing up. So is this the part where we were saying the hitbox is a bit wonky? It's a bit... Okay, I rolled too early. Oh dear. Hesitation is defeat. Yeah. Maybe I just roll when I think it's correct. Say hi to your old friend Tree Sentinels? What do you mean? of it hits you. Oh, by the hinterland. Right, yeah. I did see one of them there. Sort of side. Okay, the right side. That would make sense. Okay. I'm kind of just trying to learn his moveset. Get familiar with the movements. I'm not gonna focus too much on trying to get hits in. Oh, that one worked. And then we can have a hit there. Hey, Maxine. Try to roll twice, it didn't work. Dude, that does so much! Ooh! Why does the trample hurt? Oh, he kicks you. In the back, that makes sense. Damn it. I've had him half health before. Why do you think I'm cooked? Huh? It's really that trample where he does so much. I think that's where we're gonna work on it. Like, yeah, that bit there. Oh, I'm out of health. That's not far. Not too far away. Dang it. Same. I can do this, boss, for sure. Without Thingo? Without a summon Thingo? The debuff? meant about running away from the starting bit. You get stuck on things here. Oh, I guess I don't know what Malekith's blade does. I don't know! Ugh. Trying to like perfect everything is hard. Maybe here. I'm gonna knock over all the trees. Ah! Is that my laughter of pain? Yeah. My laughter. Ah ha ha. I don't know. When I do the... Yeah, it's like when I'm frustrated. Bloody oath, mate. Bloody oath, mate. Okay. So, I noticed if you're on the left of it, it hits you with the double hits, like with the sword and then the pig. So that's why you gotta be on the right to avoid the double hits. It's that charge that's really hard to avoid. Now I know what you guys mean by the hitbox. The hitbox is just janky. Okay. Ugh. Maybe I'm just too slow with it. And then he gets too far away for me to attack. Left. Again. Crazy. Let's try some stuff like... I wonder if those will help. Bah! What else do we have? We have the stamina thing. I feel like I need that. Running and jumping out of the way. I don't know. What do my swords specialize in? Dragons. Running and jumping. It does have bleed, but it's not that big of a stat. There's like blood buildup or something. That's not really blue. I don't know. I don't know what it means. Ow! I wish you wouldn't run out that far. Oh, that hit me? Okay. Yeah, it was really good against the dragons. I still have a dragon left, I think. But in the Dragon Quest, it was so good. Oh, damn it. I'm getting better at it. Oh, it has dragon grease built into the weapon. I see. I just think I prefer strength and dex weapons, and I don't mind the skill in it, which is why I'm using it. And you know what? It's been doing alright since I started using it, so I haven't looked at getting a different weapon yet. I was using Rani's greatsword before, and I kept having issues, and it sucked. I was so sad. Yep. I don't know. It is hard to stay on the right of that one. Yeah, but then I have to go and change my stats. For what? Just to see if it deals a lot? It's not something I can be bothered. Oh, damn it. You just tanked him. Oh, like you tanked the damage? I can try jumping. Commander, guys. G-A-I-U-S. Oh, jumping did not work. It's alright, I'm not fussed, guys. I'm just gonna keep on trying until we get it. Oh, freaking hell. It's a stupid stamp! Oh. That's cool. I don't need to know his weakness. If only I can just dodge him. Lately I've been feeling like my weapon hasn't been a problem, you know? That it's me dying that the Like, I should be able to fight them with a toothpick. If I'm just good enough at it. Ah! Ugh. Sure skill run. Yeah, you've seen those people, right? The crazy people that run this game with nothing on. I don't think I have that talisman, but I don't think it works for the sword. Anyway. I remember people having discussions about it already. Maybe if I had river blood or something. Ow, shoot. Yeah. People with like 0 levels. I don't know how they do it. Like, I have good resilience, but I don't think I'm skilled enough. Yeah, there's a difference there. No! Hardened to arcane, yeah. But like I said, even if I had like a better... Oh, it's useless because it increases your damage after you got a bleed proc. Okay, yeah. So yeah, that's why it wouldn't really work with my sword that much. Yeah, I remember us having this discussion and I was like, yeah, I don't think Mark's talisman really does much for this current build. I haven't knocked him down yet. I wonder how hard that is. Because it is a pig and it is a bird. Can it be knocked off the pig? Is this our first mounted boss in this DLC? Yep, that phase. The phase change. That's right, he flew. Ow, okay, lovely. I love that he can fly. Sarcastic, of course. Ah, damn it. We're doing so well. You fought Radahn. You should know that he uses the same gravity magic. I do not remember Radahn fight other than I summoned a bunch of NPCs and it was like whack, whack, whack. I'll be resorting to summon soon, I'm sure. How's it going? Ah! Ah, missed. 30th year anniversary of you being in this country. Woo! Let's go. Yeah, he's not good enough to be a sparring partner. Joking. Yeah, I remember Radahn being bigger too. anything I do, you will get a hit. I should have healed there instead. Not close enough. Oh, F. Excuse you. I feel like I'm breaking my controller playing this. I am so hardly pushing right to try and be on the right of this thing. Ah! Yeah, Fruity finally has a computer set up. You're not settled in until your computer's set up. Time for a new PS5 controller. This is my new one! No! Oh. How new? I got it at the start of this year. When I was playing Lies of P, I noticed it had controller drift. So I need a new one. Yeah. Yeah, you need like one every 6 months. It's crazy. You have to make space in the closet and corner of the room. Oh. Hey, Jib Sketches. Oh, I was like, what are you referring to? My title. Oh, I haven't got it yet. Not on this one. I'm just joking around. Saying, like, I think this boss fight's gonna break my controller. Yeah. I mean, I still use my PS4 controller. It's just the micro USB thing. So I use it for Tekken instead. Yeah, it's so trash. Actually so trash. And you excited for kitchen stuff and appliances? What do you mean next gen will have USB-C now? Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because everything has USB-C now, which is good. I kind of forget too. It's so things are so much easier when everything's USB-C. Can't wait till I get a new motherboard. Like, I need more USB-C ports and more USB 3.0 ports. Ah, nice. Ah, okay. I have to hold up on that one. Oh my gosh. Loop, I'm curious, what does your desk look like? again too far away. Oh. Can he come closer? Shit. Sorry, I'm swearing now. Ooh! It's still attacking me! I didn't expect to get him so quickly. I was like, ah! We did it. Good night, DJ. I just started to not get hit by his stupid charge. It was the charge was rough. That's what took up so much of your health. Oh, okay, let me just I'm shaking. Oh, do you guys not have a dryer up there? Man, lately my things haven't been drying because it's too cold. Like, I'll have my clothes drying outside for 2 days, and then I go to take it off, and I'm thinking, is it cold or is it wet? What's the rectangle on the map? Okay, 1 second, I'll look. I started to really freak out there. Oh, this thing? Who knows? I have a dryer, yeah. But I only put things in the dryer that are things that I don't care about. Like keeping the integrity of, if that makes sense. Oh, thanks, Jib Sketches. Yeah, damn it. What do you mean? No, I'm just saying, like, usually when I dry clothes, I only dry clothes that are, you know, like your casual t-shirts and trackies, that kind of thing, right? And then everything else I hang. I feel like that's normal. Is it not? Maybe I should start putting points in vigor, actually. Alright. Up we go. Ah, can't believe we did it. Alright. Oh, hang on. This is right in front of the tree. Yeah, we did it. Ah! Who the frick is this? What is on a die wall for? I also keep forgetting this was written by the guy. Oh, Gaius Greaves? Interesting. Why do I have to read the description of everything? This one? Made for Commander Gaius. A cruel joke for you cannot win them. What? Oh my gosh. Okay, that is a cruel... Okay. What does albinaric mean? I don't know what's here. Should I be here? Why does this feel like the end of the game? You know what I haven't done? I haven't burned that tree yet. Seti tree chalice. Praise the stars. It's not the end of the game. It feels like the end of the game. Oh, okay. Wow. How many were there of these? Like 20? There's like a quarter of them here. Chalice. Am I meant to put something in the chalice? I thought there was gonna be a whole room here. Oh, max level is 20. Okay, so there's gotta be more than 20. Yeah. Behold, ribbon. Praise the tree. Praise the tarnished. Hmm. Man, I really gotta chill out. I'm giving myself indigestion. This game is stressing me out. Yeah, and I should level up my stat. And then we can, yeah, we can do that. We can say hi to the tree sentinel, I guess. Oh, I didn't eat anything crazy. I ate some bread. That's all. I mean, bread can cause bloating, I guess. Yeah, imagine. I don't think I eat bread that often. The pellet with the poison in the flag and with the dragon, the vessel with the pestle and the brew, that is true. Sorry, what? Well, I did eat today, okay? In fact, I think I've been eating too much. But probably not. Am I getting fat? No. Not yet. Oh. Are you telling me there's... Oh. What about the other one? There too? We're fighting so many of these. Okay, we get off the horse. Yeah, you're right. Okay. We stay off the horse, actually. We fight... Oh, not on a horse. You fight both of them at once the same time for fun. Wow. That's sadistic. Masochistic. Satanistic. I'm just trying to think of words now. Okay, does that guy come out again? He come sharding down. Statistic. Materialistic. Yep, here he is. So when you said K, I thought you meant Kanye. Hell no. How do I meant to hit there? This guy's in this game again? Yeah. Just for fun. They were like, hey, remember him? Cool. Oh, it's in the storage box. I think I'm out of space. There is another one, by the way. Maybe this one's harder. Oh, this one is not a boss. Oh no, it is. What am I talking about? Oh, a link! I'm sorry! Do I have a mod to untime them out? The one with the torch is much easier than the one with the shield. I see. I don't know what I'm meant to hit there. No, I mean like, not for the clip. I just mean to untime them so they can talk. My god. Ah, lovely. Well, you got 2. Why are they getting sent to my store box? Is there actually a limit to your storage? Is there another one? Are they the only 2? Oh, you can only carry one. Oh, sorry. But the last thing I saw you said was, to be fair, they're fairly easy bosses anyway. There's a thing here. Because you're a sub. Only subs can post links. Because, you know those bots that are like, hey, buy our viewer bots, and then they just post links? I don't want someone to, I don't know, have accidental bad link clickage in my channel. So only subs can post links. Yeah, I understand. I absolutely missed it. Absurd. You can only have one. Got it. So there isn't a storage limit in your bag. Well, this is nice. Shaman village. Your sub was good for something. Yeah, I guess. Is that something that you cared about? Oh. A minor Erdtree? A minor Erdtree? Are they gonna grow another Erdtree here? Screenshot that. Like, was it pretty? Take a picture. Read the spell description. Wait, it was a spell? Continuously heals allies in the area. Oh, that's kind of cool. Marika bathed the village of her home in gold, knowing full well that there was no one to heal. Oh. This area is like you need to use a what are they called? A gesture. You find the gesture in Boney Village. You need to use a gesture in a statue here, there's a statue here. It's called Oh Mother, and then the spit opens up. And it's called Hinterland. No worries. You can ride a river, I'm sorry. It's like Hobbleton. It is a bit. It's interesting that you just got these cute little houses. And it all looks pretty, not like every other ruined places. Everything just looks sad. Oh, hello. Gesturing required ahead. Do I have to owe Mother again? I have no idea. Now I'm just doing what they're doing. Ah, cool. Oh! No. Thought something was moving. It did not. Martin couldn't call it Middle Earth, so he called the land between instead. Read the description! For what?! A braid of golden hair cut loose. Queen Marika's offering to the grandmother. Boosts holy damage negation by the utmost. What was her prayer, her wish, her confession? There's no one left to answer, and Marika never returned home again. I feel like I'm saying her name wrong. But, you know. I keep expecting like a scatty tree thing. When I'm picking up these items and it's like, oh, it's not. This is her home? Oh my gosh, that's crazy. The implications. It's her home. Oh. I have been understanding the law this whole time. Wow. I am a lost cause. It's very pretty. I am enjoying the space. It's very reflective. You know, nice time to reflect. And then lovely flowers. I was painting some flowers today with my cousin. Isn't that lovely? A nice time to turn on RTX. Ah yes, the thing that I turned off. Because this game likes to delete frames sometimes in boss fights. No, I ended up turning it off. You're right, it doesn't do anything in this game. It's almost not noticeable. Yes, you're right, Jib Sketches, but it's pretty. Hey, Darren's. Okay, well, okay. So sad area, but pretty area. And the music changes. Wait, there's another one? Did I just respawn? Or are there just 100 here? Yeah, I don't know. Just say it's sad for these people. There's no good guys in this game. I'm not even a good guy. Everyone is morally grey. Oh yeah, I have to go see more. I need to remember that. Whoever that is. There's some supposed dialogue. What is that? Is that a giant mosquito? How weird. Is that an aggressive mosquito? Yeah, it is. It is an aggressive mosquito. Now I can go to the Finger Ruins. Oh, is this why we came here? Oh my god, that's why we came here. Unbelievable. I thought we were just coming here for fun. The Finger Ruins. See, we had pretty place, now we have ugly place. Commander... That was a fun boss fight, it was fine. It didn't feel too BS, except his charge was kind of ridiculous. Oh, that was so hard to avoid. It didn't work as you expected it to. Okay. Interesting, there's nothing up there. Keep expecting something, but there isn't. Yeah, even Pope Turtle was a morally grey person. Oh, am I expecting another boss? I do have a lot of runes. Oh, I'm not gonna care about them. These look like worms. Are they asleep? What's this over here? This looks like a boss. It is this. It is a boss. Falling Star Beast. And where is the Falling Star Beast? Oh. Oh, yes. I remember these. I remember these. Ow, weak, you say? Ow. We're not avoiding anything. This guy don't feel weak. Just saying. Not that weak. It's a bit of a detour though. Maybe? My stuff. Yeah, I mean, we could probably just do Tish. I'm not that interested in doing this fight in general. You have a fair point here. I don't think Tish would be very useful. Scotchfin! Thank you for the refill. For 99 months. Ow! Oh, I got pincered. Yeah, I've been streaming a long time. I mean, it's almost 100 months. That's great. Oh, we got his thing. Didn't realize. Yeah. Didn't even think Twitch was around for that long. Really? Okay, cool. No, Twitch's been around for a while. That's just interesting. I've been streaming for almost 10 years total, and I've had the sub button for 9? Because I think I got the sub button 6 months after I started streaming. So yeah. At least 9. We should be coming up to the anniversary. Oh my god, I can't remember what it was. It should be around about here. Around about here. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't think I ever used Justin TV. I know what it was, but I started using Twitch, I want to say 2013. Kind of. My account isn't, like, I had a different account. Yeah, I got the sub button when I was a streamer for Direwolves. We're all 40 years old! Oh, wow! You sound like one of my TikTok viewers. Who just come in there and just be like, you look old. And I was like, I guess you must be 12. Yeah, so old. Alright, so you're gonna keep running. Like, we were playing, hey, I know additions, no. Do you know how to subtract? You're old enough to be able to count to 100. So if anyone has a sub higher than 100. I know, I can't sass other people's maths. My on-the-fly maths is terrible. I don't know what I'm looking for here, actually. Something's chasing me. 3, 2, 1. Danny's about to hate her life. Oh. Why is there a giant hand coming to get me? Get off my lawn! I think I have to keep going. Yeah, oh god, she's quite deep actually. I assume I have to go like in the center. Oh, I can't open the map. What do you mean, oh, I haven't done this boss? You know this boss? Get wormed. Sometimes I wonder what my neighbors think. Son of a fuck. I really don't want you to run. Dude, these things are the most janky looking things in this game. Okay. This is a pain in the butt. Ah, you cannot run on the walls. How often do we really want to know? Not that often. Oh no. I have multiple eyes. You guys ever noticed that? It's literally just sleep paralysis demon. I understand. My sleep paralysis demons are usually old ladies. Ew, the horn. Cool. Not gonna fight snakes. Do I have to? Is that it? Is that all I have to do? Hopefully. Running out. Leaving. Ah. Alright, that was a little creepy. Take me to church! Like a dog and something in the light. I'll tell you my sins. A illuminated glow. How have you enjoyed your trip? I love that song. I like Hosea. It's cool.
I heard another sound, colored by your essence. Simply exhilarating, I must say. The stars
Exhilarating,
are
yeah.
dark tonight. But rest assured, this is no ill omen. On the contrary, I believe that this portends a magnificent starry cascade. Now, take this. My final gift to you. May you join the glimmering stars above.
Oh, another map. Okay.
Oh yes, this evening is a sign of a greater night to come.
Not ominous at all.
Do you recall what I said? That Marika and the fingers that guided her were unsound from the start? Well, the truth lies deeper still. It is their mother who is damaged and unhinged. The fingers are but unripe children, victims in their own right. We all need a mother, do we not? A new mother. A true mother who will not give birth to further malady.
Okay.
May you
So
join
real.
the glimmering stars above.
Why not just sort of the race? That's sounding different. Does she not say anything different here?
I told you once, I've no interest, but I must admit Count Emir did seem very pleased. Perhaps an exception is in order.
Is this area gonna turn to night? And she is. She's gonna be my new wife. Alright. Why did I sit here? Does he leave? He's not there anymore. Turn out to the right. Why the right?
I failed you. Failed to birth you.
Who's he talking to?
But it won't be long now. I will soon be a mother. I will give you new life. I assure you. You will have life.
Who's he talking to? Sorcery Head. Map required ahead and then try night. Wait, should I turn it to night?
Please, will you allow the two of us this time alone? It isn't much to ask.
Okay. Well, considering I learned that I should only ask people things once if they tell me to do something else. His finger baby died. Oh, really? No. I'm sad. Even though it was a creepy finger. That's kind of sad. Alright, where's this map lead you to? Check out his throne. Oh, no. Is there gonna be a dead body? Examine. Wait, there's like a little drawer here. It's a button! I thought it was a drawer. Oh, what? I didn't expect this. Oh. There's a cave! Oh, so what does this say? Is this like here? That's where he hides his PS5. Because it kind of looks like here. I don't know. Is that where he like burrs all the fingers? Is he like a finger dad? Sorry, a finger mom. I don't know what I want to say. Snake. Finger rounds. Enemy ahead. Strong foe ahead. Oh no. Okay, you guys. Just keep it PG. Lover ahead. Oh, we're invaded. A sword hand. That did not do much, huh? That's concerning. No. Oh, okay. I got some claws. There's a thing here. Finger mimic. Oh. Weird. Excuse me? What do you mean? I thought she was meant to be nice. Like, actually? No. Did she hate her sister? She did swing first, yes. I thought the guy said her sister was really nice. It was like, oh yeah, but she's such a lovely lady, her sister. And like, you know, that girl, yeah, she's a bit cold. It was self-defense. You think they're gonna leave me alone? Imagine if she's just standing at the top of the ladder. Do I have to go back to Grace and do that, or do I just walk to her and do that? Yeah, I'm sad. What do you mean walk? I'll just ask her.
Ymir is a shining star, in our eyes. The only star upon the black canvas of the night. Our meeting with the Count taught us of the star-draped sky. We know that we cannot reach out to touch it, but we can peer up at its brilliance and heed its guidance. We will never again lose our way in the night. I have spoken far too freely.
That was the most
You
she
know
said.
mind. Let us focus on our shared purpose, our service to Count Emir. Now. Stop. What did you just say? Wait, no. Say nothing. I have one star alone, and only his words will do.
Well, she said, told me to stop talking, so I'll stop talking. Continue talking. Ever since that one NPC told me to stop talking and I kept talking. Every time someone tells me to go away, I go away.
I will say this much. I am in your debt, but I will hear no more. I have one star alone, and only his...
Nah, she's not saying anything else. I know, apparently he's on my side, apparently. Anyways, I go back down. Oh. Whoops. I don't think Thalia's there. But don't I have to do this first? Why are we getting distracted? Yeah, we do this first. I swear Thalia wasn't there. Because I have gone back. I don't know where he is anymore. You still there? Okay. Spooky. Oh, it's another horn down there. And an item to your left. Yeah, that's true. And a finger mimic. Ah yes, lovely, a cookbook. That I'll likely never use. But you never know. Maybe I'll be in the mood for cooking one day. Oh, I don't like that there's a steak in one of these. Alright, that doesn't mean anything at all. I say a steak, it's a statue, isn't it? Whatever. Oh, bloodstains. Oh no. Oh no. Met your mother of fingers. What is this? It looks like... What is this? It's got like a fingerprint. I don't know. Okay, that hit me. Ooh, we're starting good. Oh, okay, cool. It's doing well. Is the fax machine answering too big a spectrum? Oh, you have to do this every time. Cool. Try shaking the hand. I will. Yeah, let's run closer. I'm just trying to do damage so I know how much I do. Oh, I don't like the fingers. I guess this will be next stream. I can't imagine myself doing this now. But you never know. What is that? Are they just spitting fingers at me? Ah! Great. They are. Mist or beast? What do you mean by that question? It's just so weird. This is also like gross and weird and like just gross and weird. I don't know what else to say. Like, we're gonna make the most disturbing enemy we've ever made. It's a Bloodborne boss, pretty much. Yeah. Oh. I'm tired. I don't know how much like energy I have to do this. Am I having fun? I didn't mind the last boss. This one, I'm not sure. Now, this is an optional boss, isn't it? Oh, no, I was talking about, yeah, the guys, what was he, a commander? Commander guy? I just don't know. We're doing well. Huh? The NPC? That NPC helped me. That lady that we're being such good friends with. No? Oh, okay. Hey, Francois. I feel like I have a few goes in me and then I gotta go. When I start yawning like this... Alright. I will go to bed. How are you not in bed? Come on. Oh, keep slamming. Alright, let's go find more. Let's wrap it up. And yeah, we'll do this next stream. Oh, to watch Formula 1, I see. Okay, we'll put a marker there. Now where is... That's Needle 9. What's that? Yeah, well, I said I'd remember. I just don't know where they are. Was it Thola? Oh, it does say he's there. Interesting. Next to first castle. I don't even know what that is. Is this the first castle? Or is this the first castle? But this is not more. Yeah, the lion's here. I don't see an NPC. I just got the Horn Scent Grandam. It didn't make my blood boil, it made me confused, Patrick. Main gate cross. 3-path cross. Main gate cross. I see. Like... Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to speak too much on it. I don't want to spoil things for people, even though no one's probably watching. That's not an NPC down there, is it? He's not here. Am I blind? Oh, they really had a hell of a cliffhanger, hey, yeah. He's going to kill you. What? What are you talking about? Why does he hate me? It's the other way. He doesn't hate you. He's not down here. Maybe I stuffed up his quest line or something. Because I don't see him anywhere. He's meant to be next to the grace, right? Yeah, I remember there was a... Okay. Alright, well, we'll wrap. We'll, wrap up then. Was there anything else I need to check? You said Thalia. Thalia? It does say he's there. I feel like the NPCs in this DLC move around a lot. The centipede thing gives you cookbooks. That's interesting, because I thought they always attacked you. I always thought they were aggressive. I did get one, yeah. So that means I need 5 more. So I assume if they're kind of on the ground looking busy, then maybe I shouldn't assume that it's an aggro one. Yeah. That's why I was wondering, maybe I've stuffed him up. Maybe it's the point, did I kill him? I don't think so. I have no idea. Maybe it's the point that I am in the story. Like, maybe at some point in the story I have to... I don't know. Did you tell him to be sad forever? No, I told him to move on. Didn't I? Is this the one where you, like, yeah, I think I said to move on. I remember Oris being there. Was that the wrong answer? Okay. Well, that's what I remember saying. I hope I did pick that one. Because that would have been the one that I picked. Okay. I didn't know that was like, that would have affected it. I was just like, oh, okay, there's no wrong answer. I don't think that would have affected it. I saw someone post that question on Twitter. They thought it was so profound. It affects a lot, actually. Oh, okay.